Thank you. Yes, I'm here to talk about leadership at Spotify. I think that's a very crucial part of lean organizations, or any organization for that matter. And just like Jeff, I also looked at the board up there, and some of the stuff that you think is blocking lean implementations. And when I looked at that, it really struck me that, well, leaders seem to be one of the big blockers, or managers. And also, when I looked at the benefits that you expect from lean, it's about culture, it's about teams. And that's the stuff that I want to talk to you about here today. First off, who read this paper, Scaling Agile at Spotify? A bunch of you. So this is something that we wrote a few years ago, came out in 2012. It is a paper that describes our organizational model, and it has gotten a pretty big breakthrough. The reason that I want to bring it up here is that there's been a lot of buzz around this, and I went to the Agile conference in Orlando this summer, and I got a little bit worried, actually, because I think there were 5 talks at least that talked about different ways to scale Agile and compare different methods. So they looked at SAFe, for example, and the Spotify model. So the way we structure has been talked about as a model that people are implementing. And I get a little bit worried when I hear that. I mean, it's a way we work, it's a structure, it works for us, and I like when people take inspiration for what we do, and I love talking about that, but when people try to implement stuff we do, I get a little bit worried. So I want to talk a little bit here today about what's behind this, and I will briefly tell you what this is about as well. So first off, I don't know, it's always interesting, how many in here is a Spotify user? How many here know what Spotify is? Okay, most people know what we do. So we are a music streaming service. Been around since 2008. The product was launched. I believe Deezer is our biggest competitor here in France. We currently have 40 million users, about which 25% are paying subscribers. We are active in 56 countries. And just to give you a little bit of background on the size of our organization, this is the part of the company that work with development of the clients or the product. 4 years ago, we were 30 people only in Stockholm. And today, we are roughly 600 people in 5 different sites. So that's 2 offices in Sweden and 3 in the States. So we've been growing at a very, very rapid rate. We've doubled every year the size of the organization. So that's obviously very, very challenging for us. So how do you structure that? How do you build an organization that requires extreme high levels of innovation? We are competing against, right now, all the big ones are coming after us. We have Google, Apple. We had a few guys from Amazon here, launched a service recently as well. So that's great. So, looking at this, clean slate, organizational models. Our core bet is, like most companies these days, I think, a team, or as we like to call them, squads. We currently have roughly 75 of them. So what do these guys need? They need to collaborate and align with the organization. We need to get these 75 to work as a company as well in some way. We want them to be highly effective and produce as much value as possible. To do that, they need a clear vision and purpose, which is also a big driver for motivation from within the team. They need as much autonomy as possible to become effective. The people in the team need to grow as people, because that's also a key driver for motivation. So if we want highly motivated people, we need to make sure that they are growing, and that will also grow us as a company. And we also need these squads to continuously learn and improve. So when we talk about leadership, then, so when we talk about leadership, we talk about any act in support of any of this. That is leadership. So leadership is not a position, it's a behavior. So when we talk about leadership roles, we like to talk about everyone in the company. We do have a couple of formal roles that I will talk about in a minute. So 75 these squads. So just to give a few examples of squads, we have the browse squad, whose mission is to build a great browse experience for users. We have the music player squad that makes sure that music is actually played. We have the iOS container squad that builds the foundation of the iOS client and enables feature teams to innovate really fast on the platform. Then we have the artist squad that builds the best artist experience possible across all platforms. So different types of squads, that is. So as I mentioned, feature squads, that would be, for example, the search squad with the mission of building the best search experience or enable users to find what they're looking for in the most efficient way. Then we have a couple of container or client app squads that build the foundation for these feature teams to innovate on. So for example, the iOS squad up there. Then we also have a number of infrastructure squads that enable and support all of the other ones. One example there is the CIA, the Continuous Integration Agency. So different types of squads that all enable and support each other to together create the best user experience. So 75 squads, and these are obviously, as we all know, they should be, and they are cross-functional and small and all these things we know. To create some sort of context for these squads, and also to make sure that people actually learn and grow their competence, we added chapters as an organizational layer, so people of the same competency, such as Agile Coaches, will also be part of a chapter. So you're both part of a squad and you're part of a chapter. So we have, for example, QA chapters, iOS developer chapters, and so on. And then, lastly, when it comes to the org structure, we have the concept of tribes. So since we are around 600 people, we also need people to be able to understand their context, and to get a context in when it's so many people is pretty hard. So therefore we have the concept of tribes, which is a grouping of squads that share a similar mission. So the tribe will have a mission and the squads will have a mission that drives the tribe mission. So we have today, I think, around 10 tribes in total. So that's the organizational model. The next question here is how do we make sure that this works, and how do we make sure that these teams grow and improve and all this stuff? We have a couple of formal leadership roles. When we talk about org structure and roles, we like to talk about minimum viable structure and have as little complexity as possible when it comes to how this stuff works, because we believe that will drive innovation. So the more control and rules and constraints we put there, the less innovation we will have. But we have a few roles that we strongly believe in. First one, when it comes to line management and reporting structure, each of these chapters have a leader, a chapter lead, which is actually the manager for the people in the chapter. So their main goal is to grow the individuals, to make sure that we have strong competence within the chapter, to hire and to do salary reviews and all that stuff. So if we look at the intrinsic motivators, I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Pink. I would say that the chapter lead is primarily the one looking after mastery and making sure that people grow. every squad has a product owner who is the prime driver within the squad for the purpose of the squad, for the vision, makes sure or helps the squad to align with the rest of the organization. I don't know if we are looking at this a bit differently than others, but yes, so when it comes to intrinsic motivation, these are the guys making sure that people feel connected to a higher purpose, because that's also prime driver for motivation. So looking at the product owner role, this is something we created in one of the tribes at Spotify. We call it the product owner competency framework. And this paints the picture of what we believe a product owner should do, all this stuff. And we look at the more, I don't know if Jeff is still around, Sutherland. A bit dangerous maybe to talk about Scrum when he's in the building, but the view I have, at least, of the more traditional Scrum product owner is that the main focus is on these things. So stakeholder relations, visioning the product, measuring success, and that's maybe boxes in the product owner. We definitely view the product owner as a crucial leadership role. So they need to be very well aware of how they're leading the team, and also be familiar with the methods the team is using. And I think that varies. I'm not saying that it doesn't say in Scrum, but my previous experience with more hands-on, by-the-book kind of Scrum organizations is that the product owner will mostly be driving the product vision, those things. So an example of how they work with us is this team, the artist team. They were to build a new artist page. So this is the part of the client where you can go and get information about an artist, their music, the most played songs, and so on. So this product owner took his team to an offsite, shared the high level goal, the intent here. So we need a place where an artist can display themselves, their music, and where users can meet artists. We need to figure out how to start working on this stuff. The product owner also invited actual artists to this offsite. I think they mostly called in, but they were part of it to really get the squad connected to the actual artist in this case. And then the squad built this roadmap together for the full day. And from that started working in small increments, validating their ideas, testing stuff with users, and do this whole thing. Third role around formal leadership, the Agile Coach, which is what I do. So when it comes to teams and helping teams to get to a really high-performing state, that is something that's super hard, I think. It takes a lot of work. Sometimes it happens by itself. Many times they need support to do that. So that's where the Agile Coach comes in at Spotify. We have today around 25 of them. So that means for the 75 squads that a typical coach will work with 3 squads. So they're focused on growing the teams, growing the tribes and the organization, the communication structure, helping people collaborate with each other, and all in all grow a high-performing organization. So the guys looking after or helping the team move to a state where they can be as autonomous as possible. So when it comes to what the Agile Coach actually does in practice, I would say this, that we definitely do the basics. So at the core, the Agile Coaches are Agile and Lean practitioners, have solid knowledge around different processes, Scrum, Lean, Kanban, XP, these types of things. But more than that, we also work a lot with individual coaching, growing the whole org when it comes to performance. And I'll give you a few examples of that. So one thing that Agile Coach does quite a bit is one-on-one coaching with team members, with senior managers, and with product owners and so on to help them get better at what they do on a day-to-day basis. Another example, these are fairly random examples of what Agile Coaches does outside of just working with a team and helping them. In one of the tribes that I was in at the moment, we started recognizing a pattern that most of the people in the teams actually didn't have a very long-term view of where they were heading. So they didn't really feel what was on the horizon, which I think, from what I've seen at least, is fairly common. And I asked these guys, so what are you doing in 2 weeks or 3 weeks? And most of them said, I don't really know, actually. I don't know if we're becoming overly agile or whatever, but that was, I saw that as a problem because I think that's important. So we started looking into road mapping, me and some coaches in this tribe, and most of the stuff that we saw and the experience we had was that road mapping was kind of dull and uninspiring. Most of the experience we had was around like Gantt charts and that kind of stuff. So we said, let's create something new. Let's see how that goes. So we came up with a new type of visualization here, where we brought in another coach from another tribe who's really good at drawing. So we envisioned this road where the team is traveling in this bus. And along the way, there are these high-level chunks of works, themes, epics, projects, whatever you want to call them. We drew them as clouds, put them up there. Or we ran workshops with the team, so they put this stuff up there. We came up with other symbols like stormy weather, a rocket symbolizes a launch, and so on. And then we created these posters together with the team. They made their roadmaps. So this particular one, I think it's a matter of like 3 months. And everything is really easy to move around and adjust as you go along the way. So very, very lightweight and visible, and worked out pretty well with these teams. So that's another example of something that the Agile coaches might do. Final example of that is same tribe. This tribe was the guys actually shipping the clients, and we saw this problem of people really seeing software development as cycles, where we had a 3-week release cycle. It's a sequence of steps, and what we want to do is obviously always to be in a releasable state and make people think of it that you're not done until stuff is in production. So we created this, we realized we needed to start this cultural shift around continuous delivery, basically, to get people to change their mindset. So first thing we did was, well, we did a lot of one-on-ones to figure this out, see how people viewed continuous delivery. Then we created a workshop around continuous delivery maturity that we ran with, I don't know how many, but a lot of squads to raise their awareness and to see where we were as an organization. And from there, we started doing all sorts of initiatives to help drive the whole organization towards this. And this was about a year ago, and we've moved pretty far from where we were. On the web client, we're doing releases several times every day. On mobile, we are down to a much shorter cycle than before. And when it comes to the attention to having a clean master and stuff like that, it's in a very good state right now. So these are the 3 roles that are working with a squad, supporting a squad. How does that work in practice then? We realized that these roles need to work really tightly together to be able to grow these teams. So that's where we created the concept of a potluck, which stands for product owner, team lead, chapter lead, and Agile coach. So these guys become sort of a leadership team or support team for the squad. That get together on a regular basis, talk about how can we support these guys to become as good as they possibly can. So before I will talk a bit more about what that means in practice, but I'll just take you through the last leadership roles here, which is the tribe lead. So each of the tribes has a tribe lead with the purpose of growing a high-performing tribe. So coaching the coaches and work with the chapter leads and build a strong tribe leadership team, which all of the tribes have, which is usually a combination of all the chapter leads, product owner, and agile coaches in the tribe that work together to grow a strong culture in the tribe. So that's the structure and the roles. So why leadership teams? Why not just have managers? I think that's probably a more common pattern in organizations. And when we think about that, I tend to agree that I think that definitely a good manager will beat a dysfunctional team any day. But what I also pretty strongly believe in is that a dysfunctional leadership team will beat a bad manager any day, because a team, if a team is dysfunctional, that will show and people around it will notice. A bad manager, from my experience, can act maybe too long before it's being noticed. So that's definitely one side of that. And since that shows, we have the opportunity to help these guys, to support them, to grow strong leadership teams, because also a strong leadership team, I believe, will beat a good manager any day, because we get more perspectives to the table. Well, you know why we believe in teams. So just as we believe in teams when it comes to developing software, we also believe in teams when it comes to developing people and teams and the organization. So about that, high-performing squads, what does that mean? What do these potlucks do? What's their purpose? What are they aiming at? When I think about high-performing squads, I like to see it this way. I think there are two sides to high-performing squads, high-performing teams. First one, on the left-hand side here, the dynamics of the team. So the relations of the team, how are they dealing with conflict? How are they communicating? Are they giving each other feedback? Those types of things. And on the right-hand side, more the stuff they actually do. How are they working? What's the value they're producing? How fast are they working? Those things. So to talk a little bit more about the dynamics of the team, this particular model here is called IMGD. It is based on the Tuckman model of group development, forming, storming, norming, performing. You familiar with that? So this is basically the same thing. But all these models say roughly the same thing, right? Any team you create will go through different phases. Initially, there will be first phase here, dependency, inclusion, or forming. A fairly polite climate. People will be a bit cautious not to step on each other's toes. Not much work get done. Then you can also call that phase the honeymoon phase. Something pushes the team to go into conflict. They challenge each other, and the second phase here is a bit can be more or less rough depending on the team, but usually it's about people trying to get their will through rather than work with the team. If they manage to get through that, move into a phase of trust and structure, they start to find their ways. I think the biggest challenge in this phase is usually that the team ends up in a kind of a us against them sort of feeling. I think you might have seen that as well. You can hear teams talking about or having the feeling of that they're actually a little bit better than the other ones. So if they manage to come through that, go through that, then they'll end up in the fourth final phase of group development, where they're super clear on their goals, their mission, their roles. They have a great feedback culture. When conflict happens, they know how to deal with it. So when talking about autonomy from a team development perspective or team dynamic perspective, I believe that a team cannot be truly autonomous until they are in the fourth and final phase. Which is mostly why I want to tell you about this. most of you seem to be familiar with these types of models, but when leading teams, we shall not forget about these things. And especially in the agile world, we talk so much about give people the support they need and get out of their way, is what we're saying, right? And to some, I think that means get out of their way. And they forget about give the support part, which I think is crucial. They will probably need help to get through the conflict and all that stuff. So with the dynamics in place, it's about the result-driven activities, or the stuff that's actually happening in the team, the way they're working, the value they're producing. And here, it's definitely very, very interesting to talk more about autonomy, I think. And this might be one way of looking at autonomy, that it's either we have super high alignment or we have super high autonomy. And we have to kind of choose where on the scale we want to be. But we don't think that's really true. We think it's more of a matrix where you can have both high autonomy and high alignment and collaboration, which is probably the sweet spot where we want to be. So we want to grow really high performing and autonomous teams that collaborate and align with each other, because that's where we get the collaborative culture. And we want to be there for most part, I think. But sometimes we also want to go down into chaos, because that will drive even more innovation sometimes if you feel no constraints at all from the organization. So that's where we do things like hack weeks, hack days. We're also experimenting now with a few teams where we have given them the message of, actually, we want you to completely forget that you're part of an organization. You are you. Don't mind the others, just go. Just prototype, don't care about quality. Let's see where you guys end up. We want you to do as many experiments as possible. We are all about doing that on a day-to-day basis as well, but usually being a team, you have to be aware of interfacing teams as well, which probably slows you down, but it will also make us build stuff that fits together that we can ship in the end. But right now we're pushing a couple of teams to forget about that completely. We'll see where we end up with that. So autonomy, I think it's a matter of these two things. We need to balance the squad together with the whole company. So that's a message that we're definitely conveying to the squads. We had a bit of a problem, actually, that we pushed autonomy too hard, so that teams stopped talking to each other. And that's probably in combination with them not being mature enough to deal with this themselves. So when it comes to what these potlucks do in practice, this is one thing that's happening right now as well around priorities. So we have been using something called OKRs, which is objectives and key results, that we've been doing for quite some time, where the tribes and the squads create set goals on a quarterly basis. And that's been kind of a constraint on the organization. We want all teams to do this. Every third month, we set new goals. You might take the goals you had from the last quarter and keep working on them, but we want this pulse. We felt that was actually a bit too constrained for the teams. So we recently removed that and said that with some inspiration from Stephen Bungay here, we want to convey the intent from the organization, and we want the squads to have priorities all the time, but we're not expecting them to do it on a cadence like that. So at any given point in time, the squad will have a set of goals, at least a goal that will be visible to the rest of the organization. So that's the potluck, that's squad autonomy, that's the org structure and the formal leadership roles. So when we look at the whole organization then, this is actually what it looks like. When we talk about, or when I talk about this, I don't know what feeling you get, but when you're working in Spotify, it doesn't feel like we have a lot of hierarchy. And I think that's a lot has to do with the matrix structure. So the reporting lines isn't very clear on a day-to-day basis, but when we're looking at it, this is how it looks. So there is a definite hierarchy there, but how it feels like and how we like to view it is more this. And we prefer to call it a supporting structure. And everything is, in the end, about supporting the teams and the individual engineers to give them as much autonomy as possible to help them move to this high-performing state where leaders can just step out of their way and have them make as much decisions as possible. So all these roles I've been talking about is about enabling that and supporting that growth for these teams and for the people in them. So the company's definitely a very, very organic structure. This is probably a good picture of what it looks like. Teams come and go, we split them, we merge them, we create new tribes, we remove tribes completely. The way things are working, the roles there's not a lot of constraints. So sometimes I get the question, so who makes the calls? Who makes the decisions? And the answer I give to that is that if you need to know that, then you're probably in the wrong place. That happens very, very organically. And as I said, we want the squads to make as many of the decisions as possible. And there's no clear structure around that. So when working with all these squads and this organization in this organic way, how do we know how we're actually doing? How do we know how these squads are performing? Is there a way to measure productivity? I've been asked that question many times and looked for answers myself. My answer is no, you can't measure productivity. If you have another opinion on that, please talk to me afterwards. But what you can do, though, is that you can look at a lot of other stuff. This is something that we do. We do squad health checks with the squads, at least in my tribe right now. We do that on a regular cadence. So me and a couple of the coaches came up with this way of looking at a squad and the different aspects of a great team. And a definition for so we came up with, I think, 11 different areas that we think that if all of these are in a good state, then this team is probably healthy and doing very well. And then we are running workshops with the teams where they self-evaluate and discuss around each of these areas. So you have 3 examples here of them. So when doing this, we get this picture of the whole tribe. In this case, a tribe of 7 squads with the areas to the left on the vertical side. And there you see the areas. So pawns or players, for example, it might not make sense to you. That is the autonomy card. Are you playing the game or are you merely pawns in a game of chess? Is the question we ask the teams there. And the teams will say that, well, yes, this is great. We're super happy here. This is in a good state. That's the green light. Red light is, no, this is definitely not there. And yellow is somewhere in between. The arrows you see is the trend. So how are the team feeling right now about it? Is this an area that's improving, or is it getting worse, or is it staying the same? So when looking at this for the tribe, we can see a couple of things. Squad 2, for example, is in a very bad shape, and they actually were. They were having a lot of problems. They were definitely in the conflict phase. A couple of individuals not working very well together. They had a bit of an unclear mission. All sorts of trouble in that team. So they needed a lot of support. On the other hand, looking at Squad 3, they're done, right? 4, sorry. Actually, no. Squad 4 was formed like a week, I think, before we did this. So they were definitely on honeymoon, right? So you know that feeling. Everything is just great and working. So that's also a very interesting signal for the leaders and for people around them, for the potluck. We probably need to help them with their self-awareness a little bit here. So that's on the squad side. And looking on the horizontal side here, you can also learn a couple of things. So looking at easy to release, for example, here. This was done exactly a year ago. That was a pattern, obviously, in the tribe, that people weren't happy with that. So this was one of the triggers for the continuous delivery initiative I talked about earlier. So I think we are doing it, well, it has improved since we did this. The other one here is probably health of code base, which I've never met a software development team that's been really, really happy about the health of the code base. I think that's just a pattern.
What's with squad 3?
What's with squad 3?
They think it's healthy.
They think it's fairly healthy, yeah.
But they're not going anywhere.
So, to wrap this up, the org structure, the Spotify model, if you will, yeah, it's good. I mean, we like it. It's helping us. So if people want to take inspiration from it, sure, go ahead. But in that case, remember, well, the way we view it is that the leaders, the people actually supporting and leading this organization is more important than that. But even more important than them is the informal leadership, which means everyone, and growing people to step up and take their responsibility. And that comes from something that's even more important, which is the culture and the values of the whole organization. So that's what we need. We need all of this to get that org structure to work. So that's what I like to tell people asking me about implementing the Spotify model. Thanks.